Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the fifth anniversary Afrikana Independent Film Festival. I'm honored to be the moderator for this conversation. My name is Justin Reed. I'm Director of Community Initiatives at Virginia Humanities. And I think why I'm so excited about these three filmmakers is that their work is just so relevant for the moment that we're living in right now. And they reflect, I think, a lot of the things that I've been reflecting on, especially these past 6 months with this stay-at-home order and COVID and the coronavirus. Um, the questions about belonging, questions about place, questions about kind of white supremacy and how that impacts our concept of place and really global anti-Blackness, I think, is something that each of these films touch on in their own way. And I'm also reminded of the work of Toni Morrison, who talks about racism, white supremacy being a distraction, and how it keeps us from doing our work. It keeps us from being able to focus on the things that bring us joy. I mean, it makes us continuously explain over and over again our reason for being. So definitely want to just start off with those words in honor of Toni Morrison. So I'm gonna let each of our incredible filmmakers kind of introduce themselves by answering this question, and it's a two-part question really, but I wanted them to kind of share where is home for them and what is home to them, and that could be a single answer or it could be two separate answers. And so, because I'll start off. Maybe let's start off with Maya.
Where and what is home for me? I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I know it has, its reputation, but it's like I've lived here my whole life, and I know what it is. I know that it's not just the stereotypes of what is really portrayed. So that is home for me. I've lived in I've lived in another city before, and just wasn't the same. Also, it's like what is home is also family. My whole, not whole, but all of my close family is just a drive, a phone call away. So while I'm still here, and when I've lived in other cities without them, it's just I didn't feel myself. So where is home is Baltimore, and what is home is always just family.
Thank you. All right. Maybe Alexandra, you want to pick up?
Yeah. Um, Although like I live in New York City, I've also had the opportunity to live in Cape Town and Rwanda, and I think like in my experience, I've kind of distanced myself from um, the idea that home has to be tied to a geographical space. So I would consider home as just like my body, where like my consciousness, my truth, my experiences lie. And I think for me, like that's been very transformative to understand home in that way, just because um, like I'm able to, I guess, attract other people that that I would normally find like where I live and like my family. So I think just like expanding for me, like it's very important to expand that definition of home outside of where I live.
Thank you. All right. What about you now? Where and what
Um,
is?
yeah, so a home for me is it'll be cliche, wherever the heart is, honestly. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, so that's where home is. But you have, my heart is in so many other different places. It'll be where other relatives are, will be where strangers are that we see most times through the media, but you resonate with through some form of connection that is made. So piggyback off of what Alexandra said, it's wherever I am, consciously or in my heart. That's where home is. What it is what I think sums you up as an individual. Home is who you are, and you can take that home with and wherever that is that you are in present time.
Thank you. And so maybe we'll just stick with you for a second now. You know, in your film, you talked about well, you quoted William Henry Davies in his poem Leisure. We have no time to stand and stare is a line that really stuck out for me, particularly amid the ongoing racism, violence, and the pandemic. What what motivated you to include those words? What was the kind of the thing that was on your mind when you included, particularly there?
I was I had came home for spring break actually, my senior year at Norfolk State, and with the expectation of going back, and then all of a sudden things, just halted. And then 3 weeks later, it was more serious, and the whole world stopped and was paying attention. But from past experiences and just seeing what's on the news every day, it felt as if time was running out, and we didn't have any time to stand and stare. So for me, it was just looking around and cherishing what was tangible, what was there to you. Hold on to that as greatly and deeply as possible.
And I'll say this: the reason that line really resonated with me is because I think it connects to Alexandra's film and Maya's film. I mean, when we talk about kind of the constant kind of onslaught of white supremacy and how it shaped our worldview, in our experiences as Black people, it almost strips us sometimes of that ability to find leisure, to find peace, to find solace in those moments. And so, I guess I want to speak to maybe Maya at this point in talking about kind of that theme of not being able to stand and stare. What motivated you, or what inspired you to do the work that you shared with us today?
It was a couple of things. It was through like the production company that I worked for, because things had slowed down, and we had made this pretty early in the pandemic. So like it was in like April or May. So it was like we didn't sort of have the filming procedures, that we have now, which are like masks and hand sanitizer stations. So it's like I was used to this work for a while, and then it just, got snatched away from me. And then it's like on top of that, it's like the bigger fear of being a Black person in this country, where it is that virus is affecting us a lot disproportionately, and it's not even like a genetic sort of thing. Even genetic sort of thing, it's really just the way this country has handled healthcare and Black people's health specifically that sort of led to it. So I just wanted to show like the anxiety that this pandemic has really been putting us all through, and through a college student, because that's also been something that's been turned upside down. Where it's like social interaction is a big part of college, but now you're isolated, and it's like that's lonely you're isolated on top of anxiety of a pandemic. So I wanted to show that as well. Show all those things together.
Right. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me too, I mean, really, as soon as it opened and I saw the professor speaking, that kind of conjured up something in me, because there was an insensitivity there, and like this lack of recognition that you talk about anxiety, like there is a heightened anxiety for Black and brown people, and where for some people they think being home might be, reducing stress or might be more comfortable. It could be the complete opposite, given kind of all the structural inequities, right, that we've experienced. And I'm kind of wondering, like, what made you kind of make those certain decisions? Like, why did you include, the professor at the beginning? What made you include, her aunt, later on in the hospital? And what was your inspiration and thinking behind those decisions?
Some of it actually was sort of autobiographical. My mother's a teacher, and so she's doing a lot of online stuff, and she isn't the most tech savvy. So she's so this is a whole new world for her. But I will also, since she teaches high school, it's a little more imperative for her to make sure her students have things. But so I showed sort of definitely the opposite of who she is, where the teachers are way more impatient and doesn't care as much about the students. Well, it comes across sometimes as this teacher doesn't care about the students. And then with with the father, my father works in a hospital as well. So that's where that came from. And then it's like, at first, I wanted it to hit home a little more for her because it was so scary to begin with, and then I wanted to sort of heighten it for her, and just the aunt was one of the best ways I could think of to have it sort of just be right there, and then sort of, it's like, oh my gosh, this, even though you already know it's real, it's like, oh my gosh, this is real, like, and this is no joke. So I just wanted that there as well.
Definitely. And Alexandria, I'll say, your film is slightly different, right? Because it isn't addressing the pandemic per se, but it is addressing the challenges that are making the pandemic more complicated and more difficult to redress, and that is kind of what your film highlights is global white supremacy and the global anti-Blackness that continues to disproportionately affect Black people and people of color in so many disparate ways. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of what motivated you to make that film?
So I was motivated mostly because I was thinking a lot about my own racial identity here in America. And because I went to Cape Town, I saw like a lot of parallels between um, mostly like colored people and African Americans here, Black Americans here. So then I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about how to show that in a film. So I really wanted to capture like very intimate conversations, and I wanted it to be very reflective, and also like introspective to um to other people and like for the subjects themselves. And I was also thinking a lot about like truth and the truths that we've been told um, since we were young, like by the education system because of white supremacy, like whether it was in school or by our parents or just people like in different institutions. And I was thinking about how like as Black people globally, we sort of have to shed those truths to uncover our own truth. And also the truth about like who we are too fundamentally. So I was really also like trying to create a space where like all of these different layers of truth met. And it was also like a statement that I didn't want the focus to be on like apartheid and kind of like white people too. I wanted it to be Black and colored voices that were centered in the film.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking through my notes now because there was let's see if I can find it. There was a line in your film about there was a line about white supremacy. I forget who said it. It was like white supremacy has the power to name.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was
yeah. And he's like, when it refuses to be named, then it becomes invisible.
Right, right. So right. So white supremacy has the power to name us, but refuses to name itself.
Right.
You know, and to me that just really hit home. And then it also made me think about, you know, the other films as well. I mean, we suffer all the negative consequences. We suffer, you know, in many cases, you know, the identity issues that come with, you know, with this history of oppression and slavery. We suffer from, you know, the health disparities and, you know, the other inequities that come from white supremacy deciding to name us. What I guess, and looking at that younger generation that you interviewed, Alexandra, did they feel like they had the power to dismantle those things? You know, did you leave away feeling as if they were the generation that could possibly kind of undo or complete the unfinished work of their parents and grandparents? I guess, what was your sense based on those interviews?
I think for me, like I don't want to make like very like blanket statements, but I think like just by like being there and like talking to people, I think also I wanted to point out that it like that the fight like continues. So it's very like cyclic. And so I think just as their parents and grandparents fought during apartheid, now they're being like kind of faced with like post apartheid, but not really, because like a lot of the things that were happening during apartheid are still happening today. But I think they're just being called to take action in a different way. And that was the sense I was getting. So maybe not necessarily, sorry, maybe not necessarily, you know, like how a lot of the freedom fighters are fighting, but it could be in different ways, like transcending racial dualism. Like it can be a lot of people still protest, but more like I think it's very different from how their parents were fighting because we're in a different generation.
Yeah, and you know, I'd mentioned this to you previously. I had the experience of living in South Africa, in Cape Town specifically, for a summer, and it, I think, kind of radically changed my own self-conception and kind of motivated me even more to come back home and work in public history and, you know, organize around memory and collective memory.
Mm.
I'm just wondering, you know, if you've had the opportunity to kind of take that same conversation that you had in Cape Town and have it here at home as well, like, or you know, in the process of making the film or with friends, like, what does that conversation look like?
Yeah. Kind of like similar to like Cape Town definitely transformed my perspective a lot. I think like reflecting, I definitely understood how to essentially like be a better community member in my own community. Because I think like activism, protests, and just like alternative ways of doing things, or just like thinking about things, critical thinking is very like ingrained in the culture, which I never really got to understand how I fit into like creating my like filling in my own role, I guess, in these like larger conversations that we're having about like Black liberation. So it definitely helped me to accept the role as a storyteller in my own community, and also like look inwards a lot. I think too, like just like Africa as a continent, um, like there's a lot of like it's a very spiritual continent. So I think like also like understanding that too helped to expand my consciousness of just like, okay, so like apart from just being Black, I'm also like a spirit too, and like what that
Mhm.
means, like embodying those two things, I think it really like helps you to understand your oppression, right? And like your physical oppression, but also that like looking beyond, and that
Mhm.
like there's something more to look forward to, I guess.
Yeah, it's like finding that there is strength amid this global anti-Black oppression that we continuously are faced with, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's, you know, police violence. How do we tap into that strength? How do we tap into home? Because even talking about home kind of being this non-physical power that, you know, we've all described. is something that I've been grappling with these days. And I wonder, like, is it possible to find that sense of belonging? Is it possible to fully express ourselves amid this kind of ongoing kind of onslaught that we're constantly faced? But I will say, kind of going back to you now, when I was watching the opening of your film, I felt at home. I heard home. I sensed home. Even as I was listening to the conversation, I think there was a lot being said that kind of put me at, I don't know, put me at ease, maybe, and maybe that's the wrong word, but can you share maybe why you decided to open with that scene? And again, my reaction was one of feeling at home, but maybe others have had different reactions to that opening, but it was really powerful for me. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, with opening with my mother, it was I will say it was at ease. I was at ease. I know that. It was a very calming presence. Even though the world is
That
still
might be
in
the
turmoil.
calming presence.
Yeah, that calming presence. It was, I couldn't help but lean into it, and so my my mother started making masks because so many of us were back home. She's diabetic. I have my grandmother living with us, so we were being sure that everything was protected, and that was one of the things that I felt coming from her, was this need to continue to protect her children. I was blown away filming and hearing her discuss that, as a mother, you're supposed to protect your children. And here I am, 24 years old, and she's still having to do this. And she didn't think she would, because most times, you turn 18, you're out the house, and now you protect yourself, really. But with everything going on, she was not only at ease and calming about it, she was also finding a way to spread that calmness and spread that ease to her family, and I found that very powerful.
Yeah, maybe that was also that spirituality that maybe Alexandra was speaking to as well. I mean, there was something spiritual about that opening, and I definitely sense that.
Yeah, there. I chose that quote. I saw the quote some years ago, and it just summed up really everything that my household's, my family's point of view. And they're both pastors, so it was, you couldn't help but lean into the calming presence that was there. So
Thank you. And then Maya, I'm glad you mentioned that your mom is an educator, which more power to her right now. In this moment, I have a brother-in-law who's a K-12 educator, who also has 4 kids at home himself. Our sense of home has definitely been disrupted, right, in this moment. And you talked about some of the things that your mother is doing to be supportive to her students. I don't know, can you maybe just share a little bit more about her, or maybe some of the things that you've maybe inherited or have received that have helped create home and peace and calm?
Well, she is really giving. Like, that's what I can say. Like some of the kids don't have the technology to do online learning. Like, they don't have the computers. And I heard her talking to one of her coworkers about them using their phones to do their homework. And I'm just like, that sounds ridiculous, honestly. So what she started doing was just printing out the work and driving it around town to the students. So she just really wanted to, yeah, and then it also highlighted, like, these this is supposed to be a zone school, a public school, so they're supposed to live just like in the area, and they don't. They live 30 minutes away sometimes, and it's like they're taking public transportation as well. So she sees this and she's able to um, empathize with these students a little more. And I am as well. And it's like I saw that and I'm just like, I just want to be as giving as she is and as compassionate as she is, especially in moments like these.
Yeah, thank you for that. And as I hear all of you talk, I'm just thinking about like how often we have to go above and beyond, right? You know, in situations that shouldn't even be how they are. I mean, the pandemic should be under control by now, and yet here we are, 6 months out, and we're still unclear about what direction we're gonna go in with education, with healthcare. There's so many uncertainties. Looking at Richmond, and now, I mean, you talked about the Black restaurant experience, which is something that I'm familiar with. These challenges have only exacerbated, the inequities that, Black businesses have faced in Richmond. We see the numbers for Black and Latinx residents in the area, through the roof. Like we're constantly having to respond to situations that, shouldn't even exist. It shouldn't be that way. And of course, even in Cape Town, I saw a lot of pain, honestly, when I listened to those interviews. There was a lot of pain that I felt that, also angered me, because I knew that it was these are things that were put onto us. These aren't the things that we should have to go through yet because of global anti-Blackness and white supremacy and racism. They're the things that we're forced to persevere through, and we constantly have to go above and beyond to get through. And again, I'm still processing the films, because there was so much that resonated with me. But I would like to hear, I guess, some of the maybe main themes, main takeaways you hoped audiences would get as they watch their film. If they had to take a couple of lessons or insights, what would they be? And I guess maybe Alexandra, we'll start with you.
I think for me, I would like people to take away the fact that race, I guess, like that our struggle is happening on a very global scale and it's not limited to just one place. So because of that, we should develop a global Black consciousness. And I also want people to recognize that race can be very fluid and not as static as white supremacy has created it to be. And then also, I wanted to make the statement that I think it's very important to take into consideration, like when we're having these conversations about Black liberation and how to gain freedom from oppression, that we also look at how that loss of culture, loss of belonging, and loss of land um, is also like a fundamental reason why like we face some of the things that we face today, and some of the reasons why there's a lot of like violence in our communities and a lot of trauma and a lot of pain. And I also, the last thing I wanted people to take away is that we should be very careful, I think. And because I think for me, like coming in as a Westerner, I had my own truth. And I was just like, I was looking at a lot of, like, even when I first edited it, like the first rough cut was very like much like you can tell like my Western gaze was in that. So I was looking at what they were going through, like their story through an American lens. But then I had to re-edit it and kind of like take a step back and kind of like check that I was looking through like my own subjective truth and allow I think we should allow other people to speak their truth. And that's how we can like engage in conversations, even if we might not agree with them. I think it's very important that we move in that type of authenticity, because that's how we actually like solve problems, and that's how we like find creative solutions to a lot of things that we're struggling. And I think just finding that fundamental similarity in our understandings will bring us together rather than separating us.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you want to share what your main insights and takeaways are for your work?
My insights while filming, and then looking at the editing process of everything. Protection and a rebuilding was one of my main themes for me. The mask my mother made, she was doing that for several other people who couldn't get a mask, or there was like a shortage on the creating of masks, and so things were overpriced for maybe a month. So she started her own small business selling those masks, making those masks and selling those masks. And just with the time lapse, older people that we knew that are connected to us, we've been friends for years, they didn't have the resources to get out and get foods and stuff. So my folks, my pops likes to barbecue, so my folks established we built a barbecue shack for my pops, and he grills. So every weekend, selling soul food and barbecue and stuff like that. But and also looking at we have the Black restaurant week in Richmond, and so I just think right now we need to have this collective, as Alexandra said, consciousness of the Black community, and to rebuild ourselves, but from within and with each other.
Thank you. Thank you. Maya?
Yes, the biggest takeaway from this film, I would say, is just sort of keeping Black health in mind. It's like, if you want to say Black Lives Matter, of course, addressing police brutality is, of course, one thing, but it's also like we get this sort of short end of the stick when it comes to healthcare matters, and not believing us when we say like we're hurt, we're in pain. And she read a lot of articles in the film. She did. And sometimes it'll be like something we've been saying for decades. And more people don't believe it until some white publication makes an article about it. And it's like, you should have just believed us. Why couldn't you just believe us the first time? So it's like, I want to keep, Black lives and Black health and, Black minds and everything in mind. I want everyone to just take that away from the film.
Thank you. Thank you. And, as I continue to reflect on your work, I'm still thinking about like what does true kind of collective global liberation look like for us, right? What does leisure look like for us? I mean, the ability to truly be free and to feel like we belong. How can we construct that future? And I think given everything that's happening right now, it's sometimes hard to try to imagine what that looks like. But that's kind of what I'm holding on to get me through everything that we're all dealing with at the moment. I would like for each of you to share kind of what you're up to now, and then also tell us like how we can continue to follow your work, whether it's website, social media. Because I think there's a lot to be excited about if we're thinking about the future, right? I'm really excited about seeing what you all do next. So maybe we'll start with now.
You can follow me on Instagram at Nile.Price. Currently, I'm just working on some writing and looking to grow. Currently in school at NYU, so we'll see where that leads.
And what about you, Maya?
Currently, I'm doing a lot of writing. Also been shopping this short film around to different film festivals. But yeah, I've been writing a lot and trying to make another film, hopefully by the end of the year or early next year. Another school film, surprisingly.
Okay. See, we have some social media handles being shown. Any website, any other place we can find your work? How can we keep up with what you're doing?
We do have the production company actually does some like live and corporate work in the Baltimore area. It's Tonal Vision, so you can find them at tonalvision.com.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Alexandra, what about you? What are you up to? How can we keep up with what you're working on?
So currently I'm a teaching artist and a community organizer in Staten Island. But you can, if I think before like watching the film or after, if you don't mind. But I have a website where I have my artist statement and the soundtrack for the film. It's called lookingforhomefilm.com. So like you can check it out.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, thank you for creating this work. I want to thank everyone who's taken time to watch this conversation, but also to imagine with us, right? What is possible and what a global collective work could look like. I think each of your films speak to present day challenges, but also see kind of in them and through you the ways to begin to think through and redress the challenges that we continue to face. So again, I'm grateful for the three of you. I'm grateful for everyone who's tuned in. I also want to thank Afrikana Independent Film Festival for bringing us together. You all have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.